Welcome to the first video on communication management in projects. In this video, we will be looking at the role of communication on a project, the outcome of good communication, and how best to plan that communication. The project management body of knowledge defines communication as the process required to ensure timely and appropriate generation, collection, dissemination, storage, and disposal of project information. So why is good communication so important? It can result in your team sharing information, exchanging ideas, and developing trust. Another reason is that communication can engage an otherwise reluctant stakeholder and make them supportive or even leading. The bottom line for project communication is that it serves the purpose of giving the right people the right information at the right time using the right technique with the outcome of enabling them to do their job. Communication management requires you to plan communication, implement that plan, and monitor it to make sure that the intended outcome was achieved. A communication plan should include who you are communicating with, what information they need, how you will communicate, when, and what feedback is expected. So who should you communicate with? If you have already written a stakeholder management plan, then you will have identified all the stakeholders for your project. And the best approach is to assume some communication with all stakeholders. If you don't provide some information to someone, the best case scenario is they don't need that information and there is no negative impact on your project. The worst case scenario is that that person can't do their job, which holds up the project, and that person is then not engaged in the project either. However, whilst transparency with information can build trust, which is a good thing, at the same time, you don't want to share everything with everybody. So the next question is, what information is required? To really consider what information someone needs, think about why they need it, what are they going to do with it? For example, contractors will need to know information like when they are scheduled to do their allocated tasks, and if they're supplying the raw materials, then they need to know what those materials are and how much is required. For example, if you were an event planner, you would need to know how many people were attending to the event in order to know whether to supply one beer or lots of beer. Clients or members of your project control group will need to know about progress on the project, any issues that may have arisen and how they are going to be managed, maybe variations in the project, or perhaps any delays that may have occurred. For external stakeholders who are impacted by the project but don't necessarily play a role in the completion, information should be about progress and expected completion, potential disruptions to daily life, and safety. Public infrastructure projects provide good examples of this. So how will you communicate with your stakeholders? Bear in mind that communication on a project can be planned or ad hoc. In the 21st century, formal planned communication about a project, such as contracts, schedules, and drawings, is often through a web-based platform. Some commonly used online communication tools are Aconex, Asana, Jira, and ProWorkflow. Stakeholders can have various degrees of access to these, so you can control how much information they get. Online communication tools are useful repositories for information that support verbal communication, and documents stored online can be easily updated. However, if you're on a small project, verbal communication supported by email or minutes is usually sufficient. Outside of the project, if you have external stakeholders, then think about alternative, less formal means of communication, such as social media, images, or site visits. All target a wider population than just the primary stakeholders and can make your message and your project more acceptable. Finally, when planning when to communicate, you could either use the project schedule to provide specific dates, or you can communicate with set regular frequencies. It depends on who you're communicating with and why. People who are required to complete a task need the information in enough time for them to do the job. Updates could be provided regularly, increasing in frequency from monthly at the start of the project to daily just before their work begins. Key players on your project will expect an update on a regular basis, but how regular depends on factors such as the complexity of the project and the overall duration of the project. Regular communication might be monthly on a long project over several years, or weekly on a short project. A good rule of thumb is that more difficult stages of a project require more frequent communication. But the project manager needs to balance his administrative duties with actually getting the project done. You don't want to spend all your time as a project manager just sending progress reports. Don't forget that the process of communication is two-way, so if feedback is expected, then make this clear in your communication. You could do this by asking a question that requires a response. It's usual to document a communication plan on a table like this. In this example, you can see I've included stakeholders, their contact details and their role, the information that's required by them, when and how they want that information. As we've already discovered in previous videos, stakeholders and team members at a project come and go. Therefore, it's important to update your communication plan table as the project progresses. So that's the basics in planning your communication during the life of a project. Have a go at these review questions before the tutorial.